Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare.
Okay, I think we're all set. So we are in this text of Foundations of Buddhist Practice. We've already gone through a rather in-depth text on approaching the Buddhist path. And for those of you who may be new, His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama, along with Bhikshuni Tubden Chodron, got together and spent well over a decade trying to bring these teachings of the Lam Rim, stages of path to enlightenment, to a Western mind. So let's cut through as much confusion as we can and try to separate some of the cultural aspects of Tibetan lifestyle with the actual essence of the teachings, and how can we make it approachable and meaningful for us. And so after 10 years, they put together this first really wonderful volume. Now we have like 10 or 11. We're on the second one. And the first one was all about approaching the Buddhist path, really working with misperceptions and a lot of confusion between sort of Asian culture and our culture and what words mean and so forth. And that some words just don't translate. And there's different, with a different culture, there's, just things that don't work very well. And sometimes they get translated in ways that don't really work very well. So we spent some time on that. And now we're in to the foundations of Buddhist practice. And so we've started with the Buddhist view. And last week we tapped into sort of the three ways of knowing things that are not obvious. And that's critical because all of Buddhism is based on one very simple premise, that if you actually knew who you were and could experience reality as it is, you would be free from all this nonsense. So that our suffering, our confusion is all just based on misperception of self and our experience. And so all of Buddhism is, let's look a little more deeply at our experience and not just accept things just on the surface. Like, so-and-so is annoying, or so-and-so is a jerk, or this food is delicious. So we've had lots of talks around that. And, I might find Brussels sprouts delicious. You might not, let's look a little more deeply. I find someone annoying. You think they're wonderful. Which is it? So how do we look a little more deeply into our experience, how emotions arise, and so forth? So last week we talked about how do we get to understand things that are very obscure. How do we unveil these things? And there's a phenomenon that's pretty, we can kind of see and experience. Something's hot, right? I can get that. That's the first category. We can kind of figure that out. Second one, we need to use a little bit of reasoning. So it's not obvious, like here's an apple and here's a seed. Are they the same thing? Well, it eventually does come, and we can observe that, and we can learn about impermanence, and we can, reason things out. It's not obvious at first glance, but requires some effort and some reasoning, but we can figure it out. Or have someone teach us and we can figure it out. But then there's the very obscure. And that we we absolutely need to depend upon authorities who can explain it, know it, show it to us. And what we used last week was, that this earth is going at how many miles an hour around the sun? Like, not very obvious. I do not feel like I'm going that fast, right? I feel like I'm just sitting here, and it kind of looks like the sun and the moon are going around me, right? So how do I know we're really doing that? I can't know that other than, the people who are scientists and figure these things out, astronomers, and can show that and explain it in whatever way somehow it makes sense. And I believe them, right? I believe them. But there's no way for me to really kind of know that myself. And so this comes up in Buddhism because they really want a scientific approach to our experience and not to take anything just on faith. It just doesn't work. You can't get very far in Buddhism taking something on blind faith and devotion. It's just not going to be very helpful because you're going to hit points where there needs to be some degree of faith based on actual experience and reasoning that comes together in a way of knowing that we can take that next step. So there needs to be a really good foundation. So last week we talked about just being where you're at. Be where you're at. Hey, I don't know about rebirth, don't know about this, or wherever we're at. Maybe we do know about rebirth, wherever we are with those things. And exploring with a discerning but open, clear mind. And not trying to jump ahead, get all these great teachings on bodhisattvas and all these bhumis and what people can attain. And maybe that doesn't make much sense to me. And that's much better to be more authentic with where we're at and approach it from where we are. That's the journey begins where we're at, not where I think I should be or would like to be. We don't jump ahead. As I've mentioned many times, when I sat through some of my first teachings, first I went into a Buddhist center, and if you think this is ornate, this is plain Jane Tibetan. You go to a Tibetan monastery, I mean, images, altars, and and I'm like, people are prostrate, and and I'm just like, wow. And the teachings were way over my head. But the feeling I got was so much love, so much care, so much clarity. It's like it kept me coming back. And I just finally basically realized I will probably never get this non-dual experience thing that people are talking. This is pretty much a table, I'm a body, come on. Way did just no comprehension. But I can work on being a better person, and the ethics and the compassion and the loving kindness. So that's where I started. And what happens over years is as you start cultivating those qualities, the wisdom, that it is the fertilizer for the wisdom. And things that once made no sense to me, just are kind of how I live now. And not to have any real realization, but some of the things that were very complicated are kind of make sense now. And so that's the way the path sort of unfolds. So in this approach, they want you to really be where you're at, and then start using these methods. And so for Buddhist teachings, we're going to get into the very obscure world. And so we're going to need some authorities. And then, well, who's an authority? How can we trust them? Go to a therapist, right? Want to get their credentials. You got something, go to a doctor, I want to see your credentials. Is that good enough? Maybe you want to get some references. Yeah, I want to get some references. I want to, check out the background, and is there any complaints? I remember Laura actually. I'm trying to throw myself in there and get credit. Laura was, researching kind of a senior care living facility visit. Looked great, wonderful, and then found a bunch of complaints online, and these things underneath. So
dollars of fines every month.
Yeah, a bunch of fines. Yeah, so things are not always as they appear, and certificates aren't. There's a difference between being certified and being qualified, right? And so, likewise, if we're going to engage in teachings and so forth, and we want to know that we're getting some good information from some good resources. And even then want to poke at it. The Buddha said himself, check on my teachings, you know. So I'm just setting us up for where we're going, because we're going into, the qualities of a teacher, how to have a teacher, how to be a student, that kind of thing. And for those of you who have the text, you may notice I'm going to skip a whole bunch of stuff because the section we're in at that point is a lot of lists and a lot of nuance and a lot of mental factors. And like we could spend a month on one or two of these mental factors, and there's long lists, and get caught up in the minutia. But later in the teachings, we'll be able to come back to that. I think right now we're just getting into getting a good foundation and approach, and then we'll get to karma and start unfolding how it all works. Like our sessions would be really productive and not a whole lot of memorizing lists and mental factors and things like that. It will become relevant a little bit later. So let me pop it up. So choosing spiritual mentors and becoming a qualified disciple. Now, those of you online, just remember, if you have a question at any point, you can just unmute, chime in there. I have my speaker unmuted this time. The Dharma is the key to having a meaningful and happy life now and in the future. To practice it seriously, two conditions must be present. The external condition is relying on the guidance of a qualified spiritual mentor. The internal condition is a precious human life with freedom and fortune to practice the Dharma. And so, again, those of you who've been around, freedom and fortune are two categories that come together for a rare and precious life, 10 and 8 different qualities. So not all humans have this. There's a lot of humans that aren't anywhere near teachings. A lot of humans are just trying to survive, and some don't even have access to anything like time and leisure to study and practice. So a lot of things will come into being for that. But we have, by virtue of being here now, these qualities of a rare and precious human birth, favorable to Dharma practice. We have access to teachings. We're interested. We've suffered enough that we've looked a little bit where, this is available. So that's the internal condition. The external would be the spiritual mentors. The stages of the path begin with these two essential topics. This and the next chapter address the relationship between a qualified spiritual mentor and a qualified disciple, as well as the importance of those qualities and the method to cultivate them. The importance of relying on spiritual mentors. And this is, for me, just essential. When we are seriously interested in following the path, forming a healthy relationship with a qualified spiritual teacher is essential. Just hearing me emphasize healthy relationship and qualified spiritual teacher is essential. If we need teachers for ordinary skills such as driving or typing, we certainly need them for more complex and delicate endeavors, such as transforming our mind into that of a Buddha. Tsongkhapa tells us, thus, the excellent teacher is the source of all temporary happiness and highest goodness, beginning with the production of a single good quality and the reduction of a single fault in a student's mind, and eventually encompassing all the knowledge beyond that. Spiritual teachers play a unique and important role in our lives. Qualified spiritual mentors guide us along the path by giving us teachings, Dharma advice, precepts, oral transmissions, and empowerments. When we experience blocks in our practice, they teach us the antidotes to overcome them. When we have spiritual experiences, they help us determine if the experiences were authentic or deceptive. When our practice is progressing well, our spiritual mentors encourage us to continue. The sutta on half relates to a conversation between the Buddha and his disciple Ananda about the importance of a spiritual teacher. Thinking that a successful Dharma practice is half due to spiritual teachers and half to one's own effort. This is a very famous little conversation. Ananda says to the Buddha, "Venerable Sir, this is half of the holy life, that is spiritual friendship, spiritual companionship, spiritual comradeship. While our own effort is undoubtedly essential to emphasize the spiritual path cannot be actualized without a spiritual mentor," the Buddha replies. "Not so, Ananda, not so, Ananda. This is the entire holy life, Ananda. That is spiritual friendship, spiritual companionship, spiritual comradeship. When a monastic has a spiritual friend, a spiritual companion, a spiritual comrade, it is to be expected that he will develop and cultivate the Noble Eightfold Path by following method 2, Ananda. It may be understood how the entire holy life is spiritual friendship, spiritual companionship, spiritual comradeship. By relying on me as a spiritual friend, Ananda, being subject to birth are freed from birth. Being subject to aging are free from aging." It looks like a typo. "Beings subject to death are freed from death. Beings subject to sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure, and despair are freed from sorrow. Lamentation, boy, I'm struggling with that. Pain, displeasure, and despair. By this method, Ananda, it may be understood how the entire holy life is spiritual friendship, spiritual companionship, spiritual comradeship." This is a really famous discussion, and it's actually pretty famous because it's misquoted. And so he's going to make a point here. This passage is sometimes been taken out of context and interpreted to mean that having ordinary spiritual friends who practice the Dharma is the entire spiritual life. So a lot of people, and I've heard it explained to me even, is that the whole life is the Sangha, right? It's the spiritual community. And that's the point will be here. While having such friends is a boost to our practice, it's clear in the sutra that the Buddha is referring to himself as a spiritual teacher whose friendship is crucial and must not be neglected. By extension, our spiritual mentors become the virtuous friends that guide us when the Buddha is no longer physically present. So the spiritual companionship and friendship is with qualified teachers and a qualified community that is supporting that. In the context of training in samadhi and meditation, Buddhaghosa emphasizes the importance of relying on a spiritual teacher. When he dedicates himself to a teacher, he should say, "I relinquish this, my person to you, Venerable." For one who has not dedicated, his person thus becomes unresponsive to correction, hard to speak to, and not amenable to advice. Or he goes where he likes without asking the teacher. Consequently, the teacher does not help him with either material needs or the Dharma in this case, Pali, and does not train him in the scriptures. Failing to get these two kinds of help, he finds no footing in the doctrine, and he soon descends to inappropriate behavior or to the lay state. But if he has dedicated his person, he is not unresponsive to correction, does not go about as he likes, is easy to speak to, and lives in dependence on the teacher. He receives the twofold help from the teacher and attains growth, increase, and the fulfillment in the doctrine. So I'm going to pause there because you could see where that could get a lot of people in trouble. And therein lies, big confusion and big problems. People, read something like that and they commit to spiritual teachers that maybe not be, the most wholesome of teachers, and they give up their own ability to think and reason, and so that's not what's being shared here. And so that's where we're coming from culturals. At some point in your path, you might get to such a degree of faith and find a teacher that you would, see in that high regard. And that's something that develops over time. A lot of people will make commitments, take refuge, and give up all thought and run to the teacher for everything. And that's not healthy. And we'll get into this a little more. Taking time to check out that a teacher is qualified and a good fit for you is something that takes a lot of time. They say if it takes 10 years, you haven't wasted your time. And one of my teachers here, he's on this side, Lama Alan Wallace. I spent 5 years with him before I asked him to be my teacher formally. But I did retreats, I did trainings, I, checked, I got to know students, I spent time with him. I spent 5 years, and then, he had been teaching, but then I formally asked. And, but by then I had some confidence, right? So, so that's something to understand, that what's being said here is at some point when we're engaged in this path, you may come to a point where you find, so the three up top here, Geshe Gelsen, primary teacher, my ordination master, as well. These are people, you may meet people and they don't have to be Tibet, and all that. But right now it's at a stage of becoming a qualified student is to establish healthy interactions with the Dharma, healthy interactions with teachings and teachers, and receive lots of teachings and kind of find the path that's suited for you, and not just take the first one and go all in. Any questions or thoughts on that?
Hey, John, he seems to be speaking to monastics primarily. Is this equally applicable to everybody?
Yeah, eventually. So he's speaking in a time of Buddhaghosa, and this is Pali Canon, and so that's where people would give up, lay life and monastics, and follow a teacher to that degree. So relative to us, we could be a lay person who's pretty far into the path and has committed to practice, kind of taken a refuge, have engaged in practices, and are on the path to a similar degree that a monastic might be, but they could still be a householder and, but be at that kind of degree of commitment. Yeah. So, but we don't want to get into trouble. And that's where people, charismatic teachers, there's a lot of damage that's been done, a lot of, and maybe teachers were qualified at one point, and then, as people tell them how wonderful they are, and that deteriorates, and then people feel lost, and that's why the healthy relationship is really important, really important. I get through a lot. Let's see. Let me scan here. Okay, yeah, this is important. The Sanskrit name for a spiritual teacher is guru. Lama is in Tibetan, so guru and lama means guru in Tibetan. Both of these terms have the connotation of someone heavy with good qualities and superior in spiritual qualities. These terms do not have the connotation of someone being a living Buddha. For not all gurus are awakened. If we said that all gurus were Buddhas or are Buddhas, there would be some gurus who become Buddhas without working very hard on the path. It's kind of an inside thing there. Anyway, mistakenly thinking that all teachers are Buddhas and later discovering that a certain person lacks all the qualities of an awakened one not only leaves us disappointed, but also puts the Lama in a difficult situation. The only thing the Lama can do then is just shake his head because, I'm going to say he or she, because he or she lacks all of the Buddha's qualities. Therefore, it makes more sense to follow the real connotation of the terms Lama and Guru, because genuine spiritual teachers have superior qualities in comparison to their followers. So these are people that, they're qualified. And we'll get to how they get qualified. But it's different than in the West. Being a Dharma teacher, I don't want to jump in. Being a Dharma teacher depends on other people wanting to take that person as their teacher. In Tibet in the past, a person did not become a teacher by being appointed by some authority. Rather, through diligent training, a person became a good practitioner. Small group who saw that person's qualities asked them to teach. As those students practiced and developed good qualities, others gained respect for the teacher, and gradually that person became known as a great teacher, very organically. Similarly, nowadays in monasteries, the process of becoming a teacher occurs within the monastic structure. Monastic study for their geshe or kempo degrees. They actually do get a degree. Students in lower classes then ask the new geshes and kempos who are respected for their learning, understanding, and memorization to teach. When students benefit from the explanations and guidance of the new geshes and kempos, they become known as good teachers, and other monastics are eager to attend their classes. There are some that get those degrees that don't get very many students. So, in the contemporary secular world, teacher connotes someone in an academic field who, after completing certain requirements, is certified as the teacher by an organization, whether or not that person has any students. Perhaps in the West, that model would work better. That is for Westerners to determine. In that case, Buddhists could form an organization that certifies people as teachers after examining their Dharma understanding as well as their personal conduct. However, an organization cannot certify someone's spiritual attainments. So issuing certificates attesting to the attainment of spiritual realization or level of the path does not make sense. In any case, it is not necessary to be a realized master to teach at a Dharma center. A good education in Buddhism, personal integrity, and genuine care for the student's well-being are sufficient. So, just clarifying these categories. A lot of times people get really mixed up, and even the words get touchy. Lama, right? Guru, spiritual mentor. In Tibetan, your name might be Lama. We have one of the geshes, his name's Lama Punsok. And we call him Lama Punsok, that's his name, it's not the title. He is actually a geshe and a pretty good teacher now, but he wasn't even a geshe before that was his name. So, and people like Rinpoche. Rinpoche means precious one. And so a lot of times people are kind of acknowledged as reincarnated masters. They're all Rinpoches. But certain teachers just called Rinpoche because they're precious ones. And then if you're the abbot of a monastery, you're a Rinpoche. And then, so they're not all, it's really can get confusing. So it's just nice to try to get as much clarity. And I like, as he's putting here, a good teacher at a Dharma center, if they have a good education in Buddhism, they have personal integrity and a genuine care for students' well-being, that's good if they know a little more than you. But core is always going to be ethics. It's always going to be ethics. Well, then some knowledge would help. But yeah, and some knowledge. Yeah. So although we are the ones who choose our spiritual mentors, there are certain conditions under which someone becomes one of our teachers. For example, if they give us refuge in the 5 precepts, monastic ordination, bodhisattva ethical restraints, or tantric initiations. For this reason, it is necessary that we check the person's qualifications before attending these ceremonies and not rush blindly into things. So again, we're just like right now, we're in a Buddhist teaching. Nobody's getting vows, nobody's, taking commitments, none of that. We're just teaching. If it's helpful, we practice. But if you're going to make a commitment, a karmic commitment with a teacher, take refuge, take bodhisattva vows, and ordination like Latte Rinpoche. I don't know, left or right. On this side. So he's my ordination master. So, I mean, there's a karmic connection, there's vows. And he actually, gave me a name and, and all that. So that's a big deal, right? So you want to be thoughtful. And my teacher on the other side is who I took refuge in. It was my guiding guru for many years. So, and that's where, after they passed and speaking with Lama Allen and Jetsuman Tenzin Palmo on this side, those are the 2 who are living now. That I consider my primary teachers. Get to know them, you take time. But, then there's commitments and vows and things. So you really want to check them out. But as far as, going to a Dharma center, having a qualified teacher, they know something, they're ethical, they're good teachings, that's sufficient. Buddhism is spreading to countries where it has not existed before, and there it encounters different cultural values and ways of doing things. So the model of a spiritual mentor discipline disciple relationship that has existed for centuries in Asia does not easily transplant into a secular modern society. And so, there's been lots of problems in that route. Traditional spiritual mentors and contemporary students raised in secular societies both enter into a teacher-student relationship with expectations that they may not be aware of. In traditional Tibetan Buddhist monasteries, there are many types of teachers. Some are like parents who look after the physical well-being of the young monastics. They teach them the alphabet. They guide them in appropriate behavior in the monastery. So I had a teacher at the monastery like that. There's like 20 monks he's responsible for. We eat dinner together. There's little monks, make sure they get their schoolwork done. We're like a family. He's currently the abbot now, but it's that kind of a teacher, and they're really responsible for your life. More advanced students teach the lower level debate, philosophy classes, geshes, that's a degree, teach the more advanced classes, while Rinpoches, both ordained and lay, so that's a reference now to tukus, which are reincarnated masters. Could be ordained, they might be lay people. They give initiations, tantric teaching, so there's lots of different relationships with different teachers. Tibetan monastics and lay followers relate to these people differently according to their role and in that individual's practice, their standing in the monastery, and their reputation in Tibetan society. When Tibetans go to other countries, people in Dharma centers do not necessarily know what kind of teacher is coming, and out of respect, they treat everyone as though they were a highly esteemed Lama. This can create misunderstandings. The expectations for a secular teacher and a Dharma teacher differ greatly. In a secular educational facility, students trust that the school hires competent teachers. They often do not choose their teachers. If they need to attend a required class, students take it from whoever's teaching it. The teacher's job is to impart information and knowledge. They seldom get involved in a student's personal development as a human being. Students who experience difficulties are usually referred to a school counselor. Students in colleges and universities pay to attend, and they fill out evaluation forms for classes and teachers at the end of the semesters. So you get the idea. It's very different from an academic point of view versus someone who's really going to guide an internal spiritual process. I want to get through that. Talking about online classes. A relationship with a Dharma teacher, here meaning a qualified spiritual mentor who teaches the sutras and commentaries, is different. The focus of this relationship is not only a conveyance of knowledge, but also character building. The teacher is responsible for guiding students spiritually over time, so they become ethical, kind, and wise human beings with correct understanding of the Buddhist teachings and the ability to meditate on them. I don't want to get overly repetitive here. Yeah, okay. In the context of Dharma, disciples and students are expected to investigate a prospective teacher's qualities before taking him or her as one of their spiritual mentors. Because a spiritual disciple relationship is expected to be lifelong, this is not the case when studying with a secular teacher in school. In addition, Dharma teachers traditionally do not charge for teachings, and students do not pay their teachers. They support them by making offerings, donations. They volunteer their services. Here, the motivation is one of gratitude, and the offering is given to create merit. It is not payment due, as in a business relationship. And so in that part, like, we're very traditional here, you know. If there's money in the donation box, we have a center. If there's not, we don't have a center. And it's just worked that way for centuries. And I don't take any salary for our stuff here. So a Buddhist teacher at a center could take a salary. We don't make enough money for that. So, but I don't know that I would anyway. But I think that that's for me real important when, you know, the idea of this traditional organic way of creating conditions for the Dharma to remain. That students create conditions for Dharma teachers and Dharma centers to be here. But here they're also just making the point, you know, where it's not like a college where you're going to pay or take this course. And you know, you're seeing more and more a lot of pay for courses, which is even from some traditional teachers, that model's changing a bit. I'm not sure what I think about that yet. So as part of their spiritual development, Dharma students are taught to appreciate and respect their teachers. This helps to reduce the students' arrogance and increases their receptivity to learning the Dharma. There is a natural hierarchy in the spiritual mentor-disciple relationship. It's useful for subduing students' self-centered attitudes. Students do not seek equal status with their teachers. And that's other stuff. Okay. In brief, the differences in roles and expectations between a traditional Dharma teacher-disciple relationship and a contemporary secular teacher-student relationship are great. It is important for everyone to be aware of these as we navigate the uncharted waters of the Dharma as it flows into new countries and cultures. And yeah, and I think it's really important to have that conversation. I've seen a lot of damage done in a lot of. I even have a dear friend who took monastic vows within a lineage and a tradition with a teacher that he did not investigate well, and it's really devastating. So, you know, it's important to not give up our healthy commitment to, you know, our own, don't throw away our reasoning and logic, you know, and check things out. And the teachings that I receive about the qualities of a teacher, and I do want to go through a list, is what are their students like? Well, Jetsuma Tenzin Palmo asked her teacher about a particular teacher, and he thought about it. Too early to tell. 20 more years, see what his students are like. That's how you'll know. And so, these are things to think about. What's the feeling in the community? Is it loving, kind? Is it bickering? Is there, hierarchy? And there's always some funny stuff. You go to traditional Dharma centers, everybody's who's closest to the teacher, this Lama, and I got to go so-and-so. Or you go to a teaching or retreat. Wow, I've been to so many with the Dalai Lama, and I've done this empowerment, and you just have all this stuff, It's interesting. So that's going to naturally rise. What you want to see is are they kind? Are they ethical? And it happens with His Holiness. I got to help host His Holiness in some teachings and to see the attachment and the grasping about wanting to be close to him. You kind of see the worst side of Buddhist practitioners. People pushing and shoving it to get their chance, and the topic's compassion. So it's it can be quite unnerving actually. I had some friends who were volunteering at one of the big teachings and empowerment, and they hand out kusha grass to sleep, take home and sleep under. You receive this empowerment, and the turnout was so big they didn't have enough grass to hand out. And my friends were handing those out, and they were getting mobbed. And at one point, one of my friends just threw it in the air and ran. And so you're sitting here thinking, that's probably not the right attitude to receive an empowerment. That I need this thing. Pushing and shoving. So, and then they're probably normal, good people, just around that kind of energy and grasping it gets strong. So it doesn't mean that I guess I'm trying to say that see how they are in normal circumstances is a better judge than being around the Lama. It just gets kind of funny around that. Laura and I sat with Jetsuma Tenzin Palmo in India, like 2 hours, man. She's having tea with us. She's serving us, do you have this? You have that. I mean, it's such a different way that they are. The monks that I traveled with, the geshes, it was the highest geshe was the one who was up first, sweeping the porch and doing the dishes at the house that we're staying at. And all the younger monks are still sleeping in, you get to see the qualities and people. And so you want to pay attention to that. And I did want to bring up these sort of specific qualities. If anyone online or anyone else has a question, feel free. Trying to get a bit in tonight. Qualities of spiritual master. Might be this. Let's go here. Okay. Rather than go through all the lists, there's one that encompasses them all. I think we can get that one in. So there's different lineages. There's the Pali Canon Theravadan teachers, and they have sort of their list, and Mahayana ones. So I'm picking one that is the longer one, which would be that we use, that would incorporate the others. So Maitreya described the 10 qualities of a fully qualified perfection vehicle mentor. So this would be if you are at this level and you're ready for, just this big commitment, and you're really dealing with someone who has the qualities, can see your mind, literally, you know, that kind of a qualified teacher. And these would be those 10 qualities that you'd be looking for to make that kind of a commitment. First, it'll be just in the text, and we'll break it down into the 10. Rely on a friend who is subdued, calm, and quiet, has more virtue, is energetic, learned in scripture, elegant manners in the way here, has realized suchness, that means emptiness, is endowed with eloquence, has a compassionate nature, and ignores weariness. So to present these qualities in an expanded way, a fully qualified perfection vehicle teacher, and these are the 10 qualities we try to see, is disciplined and subdued in his or her behavior. So really good ethics, you know, they're not getting afflicted, they're not flying off the handle. You're just not going to see them go one way or another, just their ethics. They're totally subdued with those mentally afflicted states. Has serenity and meditative experience. So this is, you know, have achieved like shamatha, this level of concentration and stability of mind, this great higher trainings in concentration and samadhi. Is pacified through developing wisdom. So really has some experience in non-dual nature of experience and the methods to get there. Has more qualities than the student. Is enthusiastic to practice Dharma and benefit others. Is that, you know, they just don't get tired of it. Like, you know, my teacher he was given teachings not that long before he died, you know, and saying, I'll be back, you know, like to teach, you know, hopefully soon. And, you know, everyone knew he was dying. You know, they just don't tire. It's like the most important thing they can offer you. They're learned in the scriptures, has realized the emptiness of all phenomena, not just the emptiness of the person. This refers to having the correct view of selflessness. So they have direct realization of the ultimate nature of self and experience. Is skillful in giving teachings, articulate, and able to explain the Dharma clearly. Is compassionate, always wishing to benefit others. Wait, there should be one more. Yep. Does not easily become tired or discouraged by expounding the Dharma to others. It is important for a Mahayana spiritual mentor to possess the first 3 qualities, the 3 higher trainings, because without having discipline and subdued one's body, speech, and mind, subduing those of others will be difficult. So 3 higher trainings: ethics, concentration, and wisdom. Those are 3 categories the Eightfold Path. So good ethics, a mind that's tamed, that's present, and wisdom. And so at some level, even maybe they haven't directly realized emptiness, but they've had some taste and they understand it, the nature of how things work correct for you. Someone may be able to discipline their own mind, but without other qualities, like sometimes they'll put she or he. They will not be able to adequately guide others in the methods for transforming their minds. Thus, wide knowledge and understanding of the Mahayana teachings, as expressed in the 4th, 6th, and 7th qualities, are necessary. Such a teacher has discerned the exact meaning of the Buddhist teachings by employing reasoning and spiritual quotations. She also has a broad knowledge and understanding of the path, which is necessary to lead sentient beings with a variety of dispossessions, capabilities, and capabilities to awakening. The remaining qualities, the 5th, 8th, 9th, and 10th, demonstrate that a spiritual teacher wishes to benefit others and has the ability to endure the hardships of guiding them. Not everybody's a good teacher. Not everybody's very good at explaining things. How many times I got to tell you this? Yeah, so Those 10 qualities of an excellent spiritual mentor may be abbreviated in 3. He or she should be learned and wise and disciplined and have a kind heart. Wait, that's kind of 4, isn't it?
Learned and wise.
Okay, learned and wise is 1. Thank you. That's why you're here. Learned and wise, 1. Disciplined and have a kind heart. His or her discipline should not prevent learnedness, and his or her learnedness should not lead to the neglect of discipline, even if he or she has both learning and discipline. If she lacks a kind heart, he or she will not be able to help others on a vast scale. If he or she has a kind heart but lacks learning and discipline, he or she will likewise be unable to lead others on the path. Thus, all 3 qualities are necessary. Although finding teachers with all 10 qualities fully developed may be difficult. You think? Try to find teachers with as many of those qualities as possible. Follow teachers who have at least good qualities, more good qualities than negative ones, are more interested in future lives than in this life, and consider those more important than themselves, and consider others more important than themselves. Sorry, I'm getting a little trying to crank through. All right, that's as far as I wanted to get tonight. That was, I think, full. Pop that back. So I think this lays a good foundation in terms of how one approaches a Buddhist path. We don't just pick up a book. Well, here's the Buddhist teachings. Is the book any good? Is the book qualified? Can I learn by myself, or can I have a guide? And so I know of an individual who has studied quite a bit in books for years, but had never received a training for a teaching, and basically, wants to be a teacher. So I had a conversation with him, and just the discussion was, had you ever, trained? No, went to one retreat that they didn't understand the language, but sat, but had studied for years and put together a practice, right? And so people can get confused this way. We have these words in English that have been translated, and they're not quite capturing the exact meaning. And then one word can have 3 different meanings depending on the context. And to give an example of that, we were doing a study group at our Dharma center. This prior to becoming a monk. And one of the geshes came down, was visiting. He's a translator. And he sat with us, and he spent an hour and a half on one paragraph and explained the variety of contexts and how this could be like that, or this could be like this. And a qualified geshe, they say, could give usually about 10 different answers to one specific question, all of which are valid, but try to know the one that's right for you in your context. So it's really important that we investigate good texts, teachers that can understand a little bit of these nuances, and receive training. This particular person I was talking about was very tight and very disciplined, but very low capacity to love or be kind and nurturing, and had a lot of anger shown, and but was challenged to learn from anyone, But I think that what he did get had helped him a great deal personally, from where he had been. So what's being offered here as we get ready to now go into the teachings and get into karma and things is they're laying a framework for a Buddhist view, message to approach the path, qualified way to find appropriate teachings and teachers. The next little piece we didn't get to is, what's it like to be a student to engage in this path? What are those qualities? And then I'll pull up the text and we'll see where we're going next. So then we'll get into, these views: mind, body, rebirth, the essence of a meaningful life, looking beyond this life, karma, its effects, so forth. So, and the workings of karma. Light topics. But they're laying the foundation for us. And for me personally, being a Westerner who has, lived in Tibetan culture and as a monk, and seeing confusions that people get, and even in good overzealousness, it's just good to be really thoughtful. And what you'll hear me say again and again, and just be where you're at. Just be where you're at. There's lots of ways to get to downtown, but not every road goes to downtown. So Buddhism, I don't think, has the copyright on awakening. They have time-tested, proven methods for it. But other traditions have their paths as well. And then even within Buddhism, there's different lineages and different methods. Basically, we have a lot of practices and a lot of methods. And finding the ones that work for you, that are meaningful for you, is really critical, and not just diving in any which one. So be where we're at. Put some of these teachings to the test and see if they eliminate some suffering, see if they cultivate a little more happiness, see if I can start responding to life more accurately. And that's the whole Buddhist principle. The more that you live in reality, the less suffering you have. That all of this suffering is arising from misperception. Our modern Western psychology would call that thinking errors, cognitive distortions. And that's where we catastrophize and label and do all these things, and get caught up in all of that. So if we can just start eliminating some of those thinking errors, and again, there's nothing Buddhist about thinking errors or answering those, right? That's how do we start being more accurate? Are you making me angry? Are you the cause of my anger? There's anger here. Am I being triggered by something? Is maybe some of that anger based on stuff from my past, right? So if we just start unpacking these things more realistically, and as we apply that more honestly and be where we're at, if we have emotion, like the other trap we get into is think, well, okay, I'm taught that I'm not my feelings. I'm taught that I'm the awareness that experiences them. Therefore, I shouldn't, get triggered or be like this. And yet I get triggered and I'm like this. And it's like, and then I deny that. Now I'm stuffing. And I don't give my time to heal because I'm still having a very human experience. And let's be where I'm at so I can be healthy and whole as a human being and unpack some of these things to take the next level. To maybe understand I'm much more than a human being. But you have to be a pretty healthy, balanced human being to become capable of being something more than that human being. So be where we're at. Being a good human being is a good way of living life. Lama Allen, a good human life focused on ethical behavior is not a waste of life. And that's good living. So, and in my own personal experiences is engaging in the path that way has helped me in ways I could never imagine. But really just starting where we're at and then taking the next step in a thoughtful, meaningful way. But really be discerning about what we're learning. Try it out, test it out. Does it work? Does it not work? And when we're receiving teachers and teachings, ethics. Do these teachers, do they have your best interest at heart? Or, they kind of hoping you'll have theirs, which is it? And so, what are the qualities of the people around? All right. So, any questions or thoughts, either online or in person? This was much more just talking than a whole discussion. Keith.
Yeah, hi, John. Yeah, I was just wondering what that kind of looks like for you with Lama Wallace being your teacher. Like, it's not living in a monastery where you see them or, have that much interaction. So when you're living apart from a teacher like you are Lama Wallace, like, just can you give us some practical of how that works?
Yeah, so I think in Venerable Tenzin Priyadarshi speaks of this quite often. Your like heart guru isn't someone that you need to be hanging out with all the time. It's not like you run to them about everything. Trying to think, the last email I sent Alan was probably the beginning of this year when I said, here's where I'm at. Here's the practice I want to do. What's your advice? And he gave me the whole list of what to do. And I haven't done but a part of it. So not much to discuss with him. And so, but if I have a question or a clarification, then, I can email him. And he kind of freaks me out sometimes. I mean, God knows how many students. So I'll get an email back in an hour, he kind of does this in the early morning. If you do it in the early morning, I might get. So me specifically, with Geshe Gelsen, who was my primary teacher, and I lived a few blocks from him at the monastery. That's where I trained. I wouldn't run up and ask him much. I would just, if I had a real question, then I would ask. I figure their time's valuable, not just being around him to be around him, And so I've always operated that way, is when I have relevant questions that are pertinent and meaningful, then I ask. So the guru is in your heart. It's not that you need to live next door. And so a lot of people, though, get that dependency in a way that they literally every question in their life. And then when they pass, like their world crumbles. But the point of having a teacher is they're empowering you. And so that teacher-student relationship, once you have it, it's again, Jetsuma Tenzin Palm with her teacher. She had, she'd make a list. She'd only see him once in a while. She did a lot of retreat, and she'd have a list of questions. She'd sit down with them. She said, it's been, so long since I've been with you. And he just said, really? Well, that we've never been apart. We've never been apart, And so with a teacher, it's going to be really hard to have direct access to, some of these. However, this day and age, it's actually a lot easier. I can shoot an email out. I don't worry. But the idea that you're going to, have access to someone with all these 10 qualities and, be able to just visit with them casually all the time. That's fairly rare. However, many ways of receiving these teachings now with just even YouTube, Jetsuma Tenzin Palm, I've received most of mine because of COVID. She did all these question and answer and all these teachings and all these things, which I would have never gotten access to. And so we can receive those teachings, and once in a while, maybe visit them or do an email. So Yeah, in that case, yeah, can do an email or go to India, which we did. We went through a monastery, hung out with a nunnery, and had tea. And but the real relationship has much more to do with you imparting their teachings in your life. I mean, that's where when you have a teacher, it's really embodied in what you bring into your life from their teachings, and that's where the relationship is. You do not need to hang out with them all the time because they're here. They're in your heart, and so that's the way that relationship connects. So, I mean, I've actually talked to Dalai Lama a few times, like for, but I mean, I consider him my heart guru. It's not, I've received a lot of teachings and done that, and nothing has vibrated me like that. So it's not like we all have to hang out with them, know them that well personally. It's, have we connected, and do those teachings resonate? Do they change your life? Do you connect with them on that level? So there's a whole different level there. That is the real connection versus the, how much you get to hang out with them, or how many retreats you get to do, or whether you're the one who gets to go have dinner after the teaching with them. Yeah.
That's really helpful, John. Just one more tag on to that. Part of my experience, with teachers or mentors is that feedback loop, like a direct feedback loop, giving me feedback on, whatever the material, my behavior, whatever it might be, but that doesn't sound like that's really part of this.
Well, no, it is, and that's where you have to settle for little guys like me, right? So yeah, we don't have access to those guys, so you got to suffer through with people like me around, who can share what they've taught, right, and give feedback and have more direct access. And so that's where we have Dharma teachers who are not lamas or gurus, right? But they might be very helpful in terms of you can interact, you can get some feedback, get some clarity. And so that's the way it works in this world. It's not maybe that you might at some point have access. I mean, who I've got to meet or have access to, I can't really explain how that happened. But to have a teacher that can see your mind and talk to you like that, that's just that's not very common, but it does happen.
That's all really helpful, John. And I will say, from my personal experience, it's anything but suffering through things with you. You're a tremendous gift. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. So, that's where we just have the opportunity in our centers and in our study groups and everything that hopefully some people have done some training and have, had teachers that have been qualified, and we get to pass down their nuggets, I mean, even when I asked Venerable Tenzin Priyadarshi a question, so I was testing him. Like, who am I to test? But you got test teachers, so like my teacher transition, I'm thinking and asked him a question about blessings, and about receiving blessings. What's that mean? What's that like? Is somebody giving you something? And he was so skillful. I mean, he's beyond. I mean, this guy, he's extremely realized and all that, I think. But he didn't, his answer was, well, His Holiness the Dalai Lama said, like he went right to, not from me, from him. And and I observed something in His Holiness, and his answer was so skillful. He said, I observed His Holiness, and it was after a teaching, after His Holiness was coming out, and all these people are mobbed, to try to get a little high and stuff we do. And His Holiness will just break from security and go to people. He does that. And this woman's, can you bless this mala? And he said, well, of course I can bless your mala. But the real blessing was in the teachings. The real blessings in the teachings. And then he blessed them all and he handed to her, right? And so what you get demonstrated there was an incredible Lama who could have answered or given lots of things, but skillfully alluding to His Holiness and giving a demonstration in a particular way, which is far beyond my capability. But then I can talk about what he said, right? So now you're getting a teaching from His Holiness, from Venerable, Priyadarshi, because of their eloquence. And I just happen to be lucky enough to be at a teaching, trying to poke him a little bit. So that's how this stuff can work. Is we may not be sitting with Venerable Tenzin Priyadarshi at the moment, or Dalai Lama, or whoever, but hopefully somebody's being able to transmit some of their wisdom in ways that are meaningful to us and have heard it in a way that is relevant. So hopefully I can do a little bit of that. All right. Well, let's go ahead and dedicate the merit that we have cultivated from our time together. I think we're pretty well prepared to get into next week a little bit on the qualities of a student. Then it looks like karma's coming up. I think karma's always coming up. I don't know why I'm looking at that sheet. I'm going to do this one online. Okay. So let's just take a moment to recognize that the time spent here together, cultivating our hearts and minds, engaging in teachings on the Dharma with a motivation to be of benefit to ourselves and others in ways that eliminate suffering and cultivate a genuine happiness. Well, it's a great deal of merit and a great deal of wisdom that has been passed down through His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama and Bhikshuni Thubten Chodron to share with us. So let us collectively dedicate all of the merit from our time and energy here together for the benefit of all sentient beings. May they be free of suffering, and for our own continued spiritual growth. And we may cultivate the wisdom and the compassion to eliminate the misperceptions of our own suffering, that we may wake up and be of even greater benefit to all. And with that intention, let us, those who'd care to, dedicate. By this merit, may I soon attain the enlightened state of Guru Buddha, that I may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their sufferings. May the precious Bodhi mind not yet born arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore.
Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu